Okay, this is another Muskham history group lockdown special intended to keep us together while we're forced apart. This story has been inspired by our speaker program. Later this year we were to have had Captain Dyer come back to give us a talk on the confessions of a Vulcan bomber pilot. Captain Dyer has been twice before, talking about Lawrence of Arabia and also talking about the subject of this video, 617 Squadron of the Royal Air Force. We'll look at how 617 Squadron was formed, look at its first mission, and then look at parts of the history that not many people are aware of. 617 Squadron was one of the most successful squadrons in the Second World War and is still operational today. So it's quite a long history, and I've divided it into two parts. Part 1 looks at the story everyone's familiar with. 617 Squadron, the birth of a squadron. And for those of you who didn't know, the squadron is of course the Dam Busters. We'll look at their first operational mission, Operation Chastise, which followed the immediate formation of the squadron, and we'll look at what earned them the reputation for being the Dam Busters. Most people know that the Dam Busters raid is the most famous raid ever flown by the Royal Air Force. It set the pattern for future strategic bomber raids in World War II, and it is the subject of a very popular Pathé film which came out in 1955, and the film was based on the book by Paul Brookhill which was published in 1951. Unfortunately, the film wasn't all true, so among other things we'll look at the truth of the Dam Busters attack. Some say that this man is the reason that 617 Squadron Royal Air Force came into existence. He is of course Barnes Wallis, the scientist, engineer and inventor who was responsible for much of the ordnance that 617 dropped. As a young man, Barnes Wallis was made responsible for part of the design of the R-100 airship. The R-100 was the largest airship produced by a commercial company in the British Isles, and as Vickers engineer he was responsible for the skeleton structure inside the airship. This construction was lightweight metal formed in a geodetic formation, and Wallis became an expert in geodetics. Because of this, he was promoted by Vickers to assistant chief designer and given some freedom in his projects. This paid off. In 1936, Wallis designed the Wellington bomber, an extremely robust geodetic construction with canvas stretched over the geodetic framework meant that this bomber lasted well into the Second World War as a front-line operational aircraft for the Royal Air Force. His hydrodynamic and aerodynamic background led him to investigating very heavy earthquake bombs. Contrary to the film, Wallis did not propose to attack the dams. The Ruhr dams were an early and obvious target either for sabotage or for bombing by the RAF. In fact, a government committee was set up as early as February 1940, which had launched various investigations and reports on the feasibility of an attack on the dams. For an air attack to be successful, the committee estimated it would need at least a 6,000-pound bomb to be dropped within 100 feet of the target. This was interesting because in 1940 a civil servant called Butt had produced a report that said only one bomb in 3 fell within 5 miles of its intended target in RAF bombing attacks, and in fact on attacks into the Roar Valley this ratio got even worse, with only 1 bomb in 10 falling within 5 miles of the target. In the early part of the war, bombing was not the RAF's strong point, and with this sort of record it was unlikely that a successful attack could be made on the Roar dams. Wallace had met the committee because he had considered his earthquake bomb the perfect dam-busting weapon, but it was not practical at present. Wallace calculated that it would actually need a 10,000-pound bomb to be dropped from 30,000 feet to be able to get the penetration power to burst the dams. Even Wallace's own Wellington design could only carry 4,500 pounds of bombs to around 18,000 feet altitude. And at the time, this was the RAF's best bomber. He decided to concentrate on his bouncing mine or bouncing torpedo for the Royal Navy in an anti-shipping role. During the First World War, Barnes-Wallis had been a member of the Royal Naval Air Service. He had made a study of the history of naval fighting, including the Battle of Trafalgar. He realized that if the German High Seas Fleet was able to get out into the Atlantic Ocean, it would wreak havoc on the convoy system. But at the time, the High Seas Fleet was in hiding in Norwegian fjords, where it was protected by the mountains and heavy anti-aircraft protection. Wallace has studied ballistics, and he had read about some cannoneers during the Napoleonic Wars who had used their cannons in a very original way. They had bounced their cannonballs between the ships so that the enemy ship was hit by the cannonball at an unusual angle. If they were lucky, this could even sink the opposing ship. Because of this theory of bouncing cannonballs, Wallace began to practice with his daughter's marbles and a rubber catapult and a tub of water in the back garden to shoot marbles, to bounce them off water, to see if he could calculate the ballistic properties. He was soon interested enough to rig up a large air-fired cannon that shot balls across the lake at Vickers Works. And he experimented with a range of different surfaces, different materials, different weights and different sizes, trying to work out the predictability of a bouncing torpedo. Wallace borrowed a Wellington. After all, he designed it in the first place, and he demonstrated the principles of a bouncing torpedo to the naval powers. When a conventional aircraft dropped a torpedo to attack a ship, the torpedo ran until it struck the side of the ship, exploded, and protection in a fjord, they rigged up torpedo nets, and these torpedo nets would capture a torpedo dropped from an aircraft so that it exploded prematurely, and the ship would be protected. Wallace's idea was to bounce a bomb over the torpedo nets so that it struck the enemy ship and hopefully sank it. The anti-shipping bomb was codenamed Highball, and it could be dropped by a Wellington, which was available to the Fleet Air Arm via Coastal Command. It could be dropped from about 150 feet and about 600 yards from the target. And it could also be dropped by the faster and more nimble Mosquito aircraft, which was just coming into service. Whilst Wallace was experimenting with these bouncing bomb attacks, he began to hear about the new Avro Lancaster bomber. Reputedly, the bomber could carry a bomb load of almost 10,000 pounds. Could this carry a heavy highball right into the Ruhr dams? Wallace went back to researching the requirements to bomb and burst the Ruhr Valley dams. Suddenly, Wallace could see a slightly modified Lancaster carrying a scaled-up 10,000-pound highball bomb into the 7 target dams of Germany. He started work straight away. He carried out scale model tests at the Transport Research Centre at Watford. These tests showed much less explosive was needed to burst the dam if it was placed right against the dam's wall. The bomb could be lighter than 10,000 pounds. The effect of a bomb exploded away from the dam was that the water cushioned the shock wave and protected the dam from damage. If an explosion burst right against the dam, the water had the opposite effect, funneling the blast wave into the dam and through the dam wall, causing a maximum amount of damage. This meant that a lighter bomb alongside the dam could be exploded and destroy the dams more effectively than a large bomb which missed. Wallace borrows the long-ship tank at the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington to shoot tests down the range. The tank tests show that the bomb digs into the water on its second bounce and comes out unpredictably. But scientists at the National Physical Laboratory discover that when the bomb is spun backwards, like a golf chip shot, it becomes predictable for 6 or 7 bounces and travels down the whole length of the tank. Backspin works. These tests also show another attribute of spinning the bomb. Although the bomb bounces away from the dam wall, the spin brings it back into contact, and then the spin clings to the wall as the bomb sinks until a hydrostatic pistol explodes it at a given depth. 2 solutions with 1 biff. Wallace is so keen about this that he actually blows up a real dam at Nantigore in Wales. There's an impressive bang, a huge column of water, and lo and behold, the dam is burst. His enthusiasm now knows little bounds. He's discovered that the backspin on the bomb can bring the bomb into contact with the dam wall and keep it there until it explodes, forcing a hole through the dam. The bouncing bomb will work against the Ruhr dams. This is now a genuine dam bursting opportunity. He begins to test with a full-scale bomb at the new weights, and he films and documents every stage of its progress. Armed with all his evidence, he goes to the Dams Committee to show them the solution to their problem. Oh gosh, no. Industry is far too busy with other work. You want to borrow a couple of Lancasters? Impossible. Surely you must see that it cannot possibly expect your plan to work. No, sorry, No, sorry. No, sorry. Exactly what part of no don't you understand? To his disappointment with the committee, Wallace goes to see Bomber Harris. But again, contrary to the film, when Harris heard about the plan, he was totally opposed to it. Tripe beyond description. There's not the smallest chance of it working. Just about the maddest proposition as a weapon we have yet to come across. I'm prepared to bet my shirt that the bomb will never work. And probably the most telling comment of all, it's a terrible waste of skilled air crews. At this time, Harris wasn't even thinking of air losses. He was thinking of taking air crews out of operations to experiment with a newfangled bouncing bomb. However, Charles Portal, who was Harris's boss, thought the plan could do an awful lot for RAF and public morale. Even if it only breached one of the dams, it would put a scotch to the butt report and the idea that RAF Bomber Command couldn't hit a barn door if they stood by it. He had set up the original Dams Committee and was disappointed by their response. He wanted Wallace to try it, so he secretly slipped some papers through to a gentleman who might make it count. Once Winston Churchill understood what was planned, he orders it to go ahead with the highest priority in orders to industry and also to the Royal Air Force. So, the idea that Harris had hoped would just take one Lancaster for the boffins to play with now requires a new squadron of 20 modified Lancasters, 120 aircrew, and around 1,000 ground support staff and personnel. Harris never accepts that the raid was worthwhile and always believes it is a distraction from his saturation bombing campaign, Operation Gomorrah. The crews were to come from 5 Group, commanded by Air Vice Marshal Sqdr. If this stupid idea is to go ahead, all the crews must be finishing their current tours of duty, and they must volunteer for one more extra mission. So much for Gibson's personal selection. As it happens, Gibson only knew 3 of the people who were to form RAF 617 Squadron. But they were all excellent crews because they had just finished a 30-sortie tour and have volunteered for this one. So, 617 Squadron, Royal Air Force, is finally born. Commanding Officer, Wing Commander Guy Gibson. Permission granted was the word that Barnes-Wallis heard. But the raid must be staged in 12 weeks, so that the moon is right and the dams are full. The code name for the bomb will be Upkeep. The new squadron will be 617 with Lancaster bombers. The base will be Scampton in Lincolnshire. The attack will be against 6 strategic German dams, and everything must be kept top secret, even from all the air crews. Permission granted. But up to now, all Wallace's experiments have been with spherical projectiles. There isn't time to build any full-size spherical bombs. Vickers have to make do with a modified depth charge bomb. And Wallace quickly gets a crew of barrel makers that somehow were in Vickers' employment to build a spherical shape that will case the cylindrical bomb. The bomb will have a hardcore metal cylinder with a wooden spherical surrounding. In its finished version, it looked like this. And this idea of a wooden casing almost scuppers the entire mission. Every time the wooden case bomb is dropped, it breaks up, much to the consternation of Richard Todd and Michael Redgrave in the film. Although in fact, again, the film exaggerates this, with Redgrave taking off his shoes and socks to go and feel around for pieces of the bomb to decide what had happened. It was always known that it was the wooden casing that was breaking up, and Wallace was continually working on strengthening it. Then analysis of the test film of the drops shows that sometimes when the wooden casing breaks, the metal cylinder bounces on unhindered. What happens if you just drop the metal cylinder? Apparently it works at about 60-foot altitude and the raid is back on. But 60 feet is an impossible height to calculate in a Lancaster. Until someone had the bright idea of using spotlights set at an angle so that they came together at 60 feet. Unfortunately, the famous theatre scene is a myth. The aircraft did fly in with their height-calibrated spotlights shining, but the idea came from basic trigonometry worked out at Farnborough. Chadwick quickly redesigned the bomb bay with the modifications required to spin an upkeep bomb. We can now carry and release the drum-shaped bomb. But when to release it? The release point was calculated by the sixpenny coat hanger bomb sight that was also invented by boffins at Farnborough. 617 Squadron went out to practice their bomb release on the Derwent Valley Dams, and here a Lancaster is seen flying over the dam for the 70th anniversary flight of the Dambusters raid. However, the sixpenny bomb sight was nothing like as good as the film made it seem, with bombs dropping within a few feet of the target. When 617 Squadron practiced on the Derwent Valley Dams, some bomb aimers found it difficult to hold the sight steady as they approached the target. Their solution was to glue the ends of a piece of string and put chinograph marks on the Perspex bombing dome. Put a handle in the center of the string and hold it against your eye so that the angle prescribed meant that when the two chinograph pencil marks coincided with the towers on the dam, you released the bomb. A 617 Squadron solution. But it was not mentioned in the film, so not a lot of people know that. The briefings in the film show the three main targets of the raid: the Myrna Dam, the Ada, and the Sorpe. In fact, 6 dams were scheduled for attack, and at least one aircraft from 617 Squadron was allocated to each of the other 3 targets: the Lister Dam, the Dnieper, and the Daimel. So let's consider the attacks themselves. Everything comes together just in time for the night of the 16th and 17th of May 1943. Operation Chastise is on. On the night of the raid, Air Marshal Harris did travel to 5 Group headquarters at Grantham to join Barnes Wallis, Air Vice Marshal Cochrane, who is Commander-in-Chief of 5 Group, and Group Captain Whitworth, Air Officer Commanding for RAF Scampton. Also at the headquarters was Group Captain Satterley, Wing Commander Dunn, Wing Commander Brown and Squadron Leader Goodwin, who were all part of the administrative staff of Scampton. Air Vice Marshal the Right Honourable R.A. Cochrane is the son of a baron, a member of the establishment and a keen supporter of Wallace, having worked with him in the Royal Naval Air Service during the First World War. The attack goes out in 3 waves. The first wave of 9 aircraft flying Invictus 3 is led by Guy Gibson himself. The so-called second wave, which actually took off first, flies by a more northerly route, with 5 aircraft flying independently, trying to draw off the German night fighters. The third wave, flying aircraft flying in a loose formation, takes off and follows the route which Guy Gibson takes. Their job is to act as a reserve. Every aircraft is carrying their bouncing bomb with a motorized device to give it rotation for backspin. Each group navigated across Holland and on into Europe by dead reckoning. This reflects the quality of the navigators and crews in 617 Squadron. Few aircraft using dead reckoning over Europe ever actually knew where they were with any certainty. Gibson's first wave arrives at the Myrna exactly as expected. There were only 8 aircraft because unfortunately Flight Lieutenant Barlow had crashed en route. There were no searchlights nor balloons, but there was quite a lot of light flak. The flak was 3.7 and 2.0 centimeter anti-aircraft guns. For the attacks themselves, Gibson's flight of 3 goes into attack in G for George, which is Gibson, M for Mother, which is Hopgood, and P for Papa, which is Martin. Gibson leads with a good hit, but the dam doesn't burst. Gunner 1, the signal for a hit without the dam bursting. Gibson instructs a 5-minute wait for the water to settle, and then Hopgood takes M for Mother into the attack. More closely at Gibson's attack, there is a cricket pitch sort of laid out in front of the dam, which is where the bombs will bounce. The approach is over the row bridge and down the slope. Gibson's bomb veers off to the right and doesn't actually hit the centre of the dam. Hopgood never gets into the groove. M for Mother is hit by flak several times and starts to burn. The upkeep bomb is released too late and goes over the dam. It destroys the pump house behind the dam by exploding on impact. M for Mother climbs to about 500 feet when the fuel tank exploded and the wing was torn off. M for Mother climbed to about 500 feet when the fuel tank exploded and the wing tore off. 2 of M for Mother's crew actually managed to escape and were taken as prisoners of war. Next, Flight Lieutenant Martin, piloting P for Papa, goes in to attack the dam. Gibson flew across the dam to distract the gunners. P for Papa released the upkeep and then zoomed over the dam and away. The bomb sheared off line with its first bounce and exploded near the bank of the lake, drenching the gunners. Gunner 2 was sent to Grantham. P for Papa is hit by flak, but in an empty fuel tank. The next to attack was A for Apple, piloted by squadron leader Dinghy Young. Gibson flew an orbit across the dam to split the flak gunners. Young flew the attack profile and released the bomb that bounced 3 times and hit the dam square in the center. The explosion sent up a huge column of water exactly as planned, but the dam did not burst. Gunner 3 was signalled to Grantham. Why are the bomb aimers missing the centre of the dam? The answer is that the cylinder bomb isn't quite as predictable as the sphere. When the sphere bomb is dropped at a slight angle, it doesn't affect the bounce and the bomb continues to bounce straight. But if the cylinder is dropped at a slight angle, the offset means that the bomb goes off at an angle. No one has actually considered that the Lancasters must drop their bombs wings level. But Dinghy Young has managed to place his bomb right where it counts. Gibson called in the 5th attack from Maltby's C for Charlie. For this attack, Gibson and Martin flew a complicated crossover in front of the dams. As Maltby closed in on the dam, he realized it was crumbling, and a hole had appeared in the top of the dam. Young's properly delivered bomb had done it. C for Charlie still released its upkeep bomb, which veered off to port. It bounced 3 times, hit the dam, threw up a pillar of water and mud that rose 1,000 feet. Here come Gibson and Martin. But the bomb veers off. The bomb veered off to port and the dam did not burst. C for Charlie's crew realized they had missed, and the radio operator sent a 4th goner message to Grantham, 4 upkeep bombs that had struck the dam and the dam was still there. It's still not known why Maltby failed to report the damage caused by Young's bomb and pressed on with his own attack. Gibson instructed Shannon to prepare for his attack, attack number 6. Suddenly, the Myrna Dam burst and a wall of water rushed down the river valley. 5 upkeeps had been dropped. 1 had hit dead centre for Young, 3 off-centre hits for Gibson, Martin and Maltby, and 1 complete miss with Hopgood, whose Lancaster was still burning. The Myrna Dam collapsed and finally burst, and Nigger, the signal for a successful dam burst, is received in Grantham. Wallace is vindicated and the dam busters are born. Wallace jumped up and pumped his fist into the air. Everyone at Group 5 headquarters scrummed to shake his hand, and even Harris was caught up in the excitement. "Wallace, when you first brought this idea, I didn't believe a word. Now you could sell me a pink elephant." Unfortunately, this is not quite true either. Wallace never had a successful relationship with Harris, and Harris always suspected any boffins with new ideas, apart from those who brought new ideas on radar bombing devices. Over Germany, the next target is the Ada Dam. Gibson details Squadron Leader Young as deputy leader for the Ada attack. Shannon, Maudsley and Knight are still carrying their bombs. 3 upkeeps for the Ada. A flight of 5 Lancasters headed for the Ada Zee. Martin and Maltby are ordered to return to RAF Scampton. The Ada Dam is not defended by flak guns, balloons or lights. However, the approach needs very precise flying indeed. At first sight, it looks as if a straight approach can be made onto the dam and out from the other side. But then when you consider the mountainous terrain of the area, such an attack becomes impossible, resulting only in an aircraft crashing into the side of a mountain. The approach needs very precise flying, and it requires a steady dive over Waldeck Castle, a steep turn over the headland while still descending to attack, a short distance to set up the attack in terms of line, speed and height, followed by a full throttle climbing turn to get out of the valley and avoid the hills and mountains. A diving approach, a sharp turn and a continuing dive over the headland, a very short distance to set up, release the bomb, and a full throttle escape up the valley to the left. Gibson and Young arrive at the Ada Dam first. The 3 upkeep carriers had missed their navigation. However, Shannon soon arrived piloting Alpha Leather and was about to take a run over the dam with concerns about where everyone else was. Gibson came in over the radio and said he would fire red vari-lights. All 5 Lancasters soon gathered in a loose formation and slowly flew a left-hand circuit to judge the approach to the dam. Gibson orders Shannon in for the first attempt at the Ada. He brought Alpha Leather down over the castle, trying to lose 1,000 feet, turns across the lake, still letting down, to pop over the promontory. Suddenly, instructions of height, speed, line to the target, and confirmation that the bomb was spinning jumble in very quickly. Before Shannon could respond to all the information, Flight Sergeant Sumter, Shannon's bomb aimer, was calling out, "Too late, Skipper, pull out now!" The throttles went full power and Shannon tried to haul Alpha Leather out of the valley with the bomb still on board. As Alpha Leather clawed back into formation, Shannon apologized and said he was ready to go again. However, Gibson sensed a nervy crew and asked Maudsley to try. Maudsley made 2 attempts, but his bomb aimer never dropped. Then Shannon made 2 more abortive tries. This was a very demanding target. On the 4th try, Alpha Leather got it right. The upkeep bomb bounced twice and hit the dam, and seconds later threw up a great column of water to 1,000 feet, and Shannon was flying with his landing lights on to judge the pullout. Flying behind, Gibson could see no actual damage. Shannon was sure the dam was cracked and leaking, but it had not burst. Another gunner was sent to Grantham. Maudsley went in again with Sqdr on his 3rd run. Gibson saw something hanging down from the Lancaster. Was Maudsley damaged? Had he hit something in one of his previous runs whilst escaping? He dropped in on the lake and lined up. The bomb left the aircraft, but it was a fraction too late. It bounced under Sqdr, hit the top of the parapet, and exploded with a mighty flash. All the witnesses said that Sqdr was clear of the explosion. Gibson called Maudsley.
"Hello, Sqdr. Hello, Sqdr. Are you okay?"
Several crews heard the faint reply.
I think so, Skipper. Stand by.
Sqdr was not seen or heard from again. Later investigation concluded the blast from the upkeep must have killed or seriously wounded the crew and damaged the aircraft. Sqdr must have slid down in the hills beside the Ada. 1 upkeep, 4 Lancasters, and the Ada Dam is still intact. Gibson asked Pilot Officer Les Knight if he was ready to go. Knight brought M for Nut over the castle and dropped into the route. He aborted the attack when he couldn't get the height and speed over the lake. N Nut seemed to hover as it climbed out of the valley. O'Brien, who was rear gunner in the aircraft, waited for it to crash into the hill, as he could see nothing in front of him. Knight brought N Nut round again, and this time he was meticulous in setting up his run. The radio was humming with advice from other crews. The upkeep left Knight's aircraft, and he began his exit turning climb. The bomb was seen to bounce 3 times and hit just to the right of centre. N Nut stood on its tail, and this time O'Brien in the rear turret saw an incredible sight. A great water column shot into the air. At exactly the same moment, a vast hole appeared in the dam base. The parapet was still intact, whilst the lake was emptying through a hole 30 feet below the parapet. The code word for the Ada Dam was dinghy, and this was sent to Grantham. The Ada Dam was breached, and here you can see how short the setup time was from the premonitory to the dam itself. And the Myrna Dam had been breached. The attack on the Sorpe Dam wasn't a real attack. Joe McCarthy's 5 aircraft were to take off singly before Gibson's wave to fly a northern route to draw off the German night fighters. McCarthy's aircraft, Q Queenie, blew up a radiator before takeoff, and the crew switched to Tifa Tommy a reserve aircraft that had not been fully prepared. McCarthy took off late, going between two of Gibson's formations. The other 4 aircraft in his wave had gone on without him. 2 of these aircraft returned to base before attacking, and 2 were shot down on their way to the target. Joe continued to the Sorpe alone with just 1 bomb of the intended 5. Barnes-Wallis thought it would take at least 5 bombs to damage the Sorpe. Why was this? The picture gave a clue. The Myrna and the Ada are masonry gravity dams. The Sorpe is a core and embankment dam, a completely different type of dam. And in fact, a copy of the Sorpe dam can be seen at Rutland Water. You can actually walk across it to see how the dam is constructed. A bouncing bomb coming down the lake would simply roll up the face of the dam or bounce clean over the top. This meant that an approach down the lake would be useless. For the Sorpe, it was necessary to come in along the dam, lining up with the church steeple at Langshield. Barnes-Wallis's bouncing bomb was completely wrong for the Sorpe attack. McCarthy made 9 attempts to miss the church steeple and line up the attack before he got it right. On the 10th pass, the bomb was dropped and the dam was damaged. McCarthy's bomb, which was released by the last surviving member of the Dambusters raid, Johnny Johnson, dropped in a heavy mist. It struck the middle of the road across the dam and exploded on impact. The last 5 chastised Lancaster bombers flying from Scampton were designated to support the attacks on the Sorpe and the secondary attacks on the Lister Dam, the Anipa Dam and the Damel Dam. Initially, the plan was for Brown and Burpee to attack the Sorpe if needed, or to take targets of opportunity. Townsend to attack the Anipa, Anderson to attack the Damel, and Otterley to attack the Lister. Otterley was hit by flak on the way to the target and blew up in mid-air. Anderson was ordered to the Sorpe. Burpee was shot down on his way to the dams, and Brown attacks the Sorpe. Fog is much worse, so he lights his path with flares. On his 3rd pass, he releases his upkeep bomb. Two more aircraft of the reserve forces also are directed to attack the Sorpe, but their bombs simply made holes in the ground. Flight Sergeant Townsend attacks the Anipa Dam alone. Fog was beginning to obscure the target, and the spinning bomb in his aircraft was out of balance. Townsend made 2 practice runs, with his crew suffering dizziness from the vibrating bomb. But on the 3rd run, he dropped his bomb. It bounced twice and sank. It blew up a short distance from the dam. Townsend thought the dam was damaged, but it certainly didn't burst. It's thought that the water level was low, and that what actually happened was that the dam struck against the headland and bogged into the ground. Even after the raid's success, Harris continues to find fault. His commitment to night area bombing has already become an obsession. He made several comments. The damage to German industry was insignificant. Even a small-scale saturation raid would do more damage. German industry recovery only took a few days. And now, the most damning criticism of all. It was a terrible waste of skilled air crews, and this time he is talking about the losses. Six dams were targeted. 4 dams were attacked. 2 dams were burst. 1 Victoria Cross was awarded. 5 Distinguished Service Orders. 10 Distinguished Flying Crosses. 4 Distinguished Flying Cross Bars. 2 Conspicuous Gallantry Medals. 11 Distinguished Flying Medals. 1 Distinguished Flying Medal Bar. 133 aircrew took part in the raid. 56 were casualties, either killed or captured. 33% mission success, 42% casualties. Was it worth it? As far as Harris was concerned, definitely not. But the morale effect was stupendous. Overnight, the dam busters became a household phrase. Everything that Portal had hoped for, and much more besides, the raid had certainly put aside the Butt report. .617 Squadron became a sensation, and Guy Gibson a heartthrob. .617 Dambuster Squadron continued to fly specialist precision strikes after their inaugural raid, but under different commanders and not from Scampton. These stories are told in 617 Squadron Royal Air Force Part 2. Well, that brings the curtain down on another lockdown special. Part 2 is available on YouTube at Muskham History Group 617 Squadron Part 2, and the story is well worth finishing. In the meantime, as usual, stay safe, stay home, stay healthy. We'll meet again. Bye for now.